Sarah never imagined that her own sister would humiliate her in front of their entire family, slapping her across the face and calling her worthless. What Rebecca didn't know was that Sarah wasn't just the quiet librarian everyone thought she was. She was married to one of the most powerful men in the country, and when he found out what happened, he made sure the entire family learned a lesson they'd never forget. Sarah Martinez had always been the invisible one in her family, while her sister Rebecca chased success in real estate and her brother David built his law practice. Sarah found peace in the quiet corners of the Riverside Public Library, where she worked as a children's librarian. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her days were filled with storytime sessions, helping students with research, and organizing book drives for underprivileged kids. To everyone who knew her, including her own family, Sarah was just a simple woman who had chosen books over ambition. What they didn't know was that 18 months ago, Sarah had secretly married Marcus Thompson, the CEO of Thompson Industries, a tech conglomerate worth over $3 billion. Their wedding had been a private ceremony on his estate, witnessed only by a judge and two close friends. Marcus had wanted a grand celebration, but Sarah insisted on keeping it quiet. She wasn't ready for the world to know that the humble librarian had married one of the most eligible bachelors in the state. The secrecy wasn't about shame or fear. Sarah had inherited a substantial trust fund from her late grandfather, a railroad tycoon whose wealth had been carefully managed and grown over decades. She could have lived luxuriously without working a day in her life, but she chose to honor her grandfather's memory by living modestly and contributing to her community. The library job wasn't about the modest salary it provided. It was about the difference she made in children's lives every single day. Marcus understood and respected her choice. He had fallen in love with Sarah precisely because she was genuine, unpretentious, and valued substance over appearance. Their relationship had begun when he visited the library for a quiet place to work during a particularly stressful business deal. Sarah had simply treated him like any other patron, offering him coffee and recommending a comfortable corner table. She had no idea who he was, and that anonymity had been refreshing for a man accustomed to people wanting something from him. Their courtship had been conducted away from public scrutiny. Marcus would pick her up after work in an ordinary sedan rather than his usual luxury vehicles. They dined at small family restaurants instead of exclusive establishments. Sarah appreciated that he respected her desire for normalcy, and Marcus cherished having someone in his life who loved him for who he was, rather than what he could provide. The decision to keep their marriage secret had been mutual, but it was primarily driven by Sarah's concerns about how her family would react. The Martinez family had always operated on a complex dynamic of competition and judgment. Rebecca, the oldest at 32, had built a successful real estate empire and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of her achievements. David, the middle child, was a partner at a prestigious law firm and shared Rebecca's tendency to measure worth by professional success and material possessions. Sarah, at 28, had always been treated as the family disappointment. Her choice to work at a library was seen as a lack of ambition. Her simple apartment, modest car, and preference for quiet evenings over social events were constant sources of commentary from her siblings. Family gatherings often felt like performance evaluations where Sarah consistently fell short of expectations. The upcoming family reunion was meant to celebrate their parents' 40th wedding anniversary. Elena and Roberto Martinez had planned a weekend gathering at their home in the suburbs, inviting extended family, old friends, and neighbors for a celebration of their enduring marriage date. Sarah had been looking forward to it, hoping that perhaps this time the focus would be on her parents rather than on comparing the achievements of their children. As she prepared for the weekend, Sarah carefully selected her outfit. She chose a simple navy dress from her closet, comfortable flats, and minimal jewelry. Marcus had offered to buy her something more elaborate, but Sarah preferred to attend as herself rather than as the wife of a billionaire. She wanted to celebrate her parents' milestone without creating distractions or complications. The morning of the reunion, Sarah arrived at her childhood home carrying a carefully wrapped gift for her parents. She had commissioned a local artist to create a custom painting of the house where they had raised their family, complete with the garden that her mother tended with such care. The gift was personal and meaningful, reflecting hours of thought about what would truly touch their hearts. Rebecca arrived shortly after Sarah, stepping out of her new BMW wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. She was followed by her husband James and their two young children, all dressed as if they were attending a fashion show rather than a family gathering. David arrived with his wife Monica, both fresh from their recent vacation to Europe and eager to share details about their luxury hotel experiences. The extended family began arriving throughout the afternoon. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends filled the house with laughter and conversation. Sarah found herself naturally gravitating toward the children, helping to organize games and activities to keep them entertained. She felt most comfortable when she could contribute in ways that aligned with her strengths and interests. As the afternoon progressed, the inevitable family dynamics began to emerge. Rebecca held court in the living room, regaling relatives with stories of her latest real estate deals and the exclusive properties she represented. David discussed his recent victory in a high-profile case, detailing the substantial settlement he had secured for his client. The conversation naturally turned to achievements, acquisitions, and advancement. Sarah's aunt Carmen, her father's sister, approached her with genuine warmth. Carmen had always been Sarah's favorite relative, a retired teacher who understood the value of education and service. They talked about Sarah's recent initiatives at the library, including a new literacy program for adults and a summer reading challenge that had exceeded all participation goals. Rebecca overheard their conversation and joined them with a patronizing smile. "It's so sweet that Sarah is still playing with books and children," she said, her tone suggesting that Sarah's work was more hobby than profession. "I keep telling her that she could make real money if she got her real estate license. I could even help her get started in the business." Sarah felt the familiar sting of her sister's condescension but responded calmly. "I love what I do, Rebecca. Making a difference in children's lives feels like real success to me." Rebecca's laugh was sharp. "Oh, Sarah, you're so naive. Making a difference doesn't pay the bills or build a future. Look at David and me. We've built something substantial. We've created security for our families. What do you have to show for all your difference making?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah could have mentioned her trust fund, her investments, or her marriage to one of the wealthiest men in the state. Instead, she simply said, "I have work that fulfills me and relationships that matter." "Relationships," Rebecca repeated mockingly. "You mean your books and the children at the library?" "Sarah, you're 28 years old. Don't you think it's time to grow up and build a real life? Find a husband, start a family, create something meaningful?" The irony of her sister's words wasn't lost on Sarah. She was married to a man who adored her, and they had been discussing starting a family in the near future, but explaining that would require revealing truths she wasn't ready to share. Instead, she excused herself to help her mother in the kitchen. Elena Martinez was arranging appetizers on serving platters when Sarah entered the kitchen. Her mother looked up with a tired smile.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"Your sister means well, Misha," she said softly, having overheard the conversation. "She just wants you to be happy and secure." Sarah helped her mother carry the food to the dining room. "I am happy, Mama. Why is it so hard for everyone to understand that?" Her mother paused in the doorway. "Because they measure happiness by things they can see and count. Your happiness is quieter, deeper. Some people don't understand that kind of contentment." The evening continued with dinner, toast to her parents' marriage, and the kind of storytelling that happens when families gather. Sarah listened to relatives share memories of her parents' early years, their struggles and triumphs, the way they had built a life together through love and determination. She felt grateful to be part of a family with such deep roots and enduring connections. After dinner, the family gathered in the living room for the gift presentation. Rebecca and James presented her parents with an expensive crystal vase, announcing loudly that it was from an exclusive boutique downtown. David and Monica gave them a luxury vacation package to Hawaii, complete with first-class flights and resort accommodations. The gifts were generous and impressive, drawing appreciative comments from the extended family. When Sarah's turn came, she felt suddenly self-conscious about her handmade gift. The commissioned painting seemed modest compared to the elaborate presents her siblings had chosen. She unwrapped it carefully and explained the thought behind it, describing how she had worked with the artist to capture not just the house but the feelings of home and family that it represented. Her parents' reaction was immediate and emotional. Her father's eyes filled with tears as he recognized every detail of their property, from the mailbox he had painted every few years to the swing he had hung from the old oak tree. Her mother traced the painted garden with her finger, marveling at how the artist had captured the roses she had tended for decades. "This is the most beautiful gift," Elena whispered, hugging Sarah tightly. You captured our whole life in this painting." The room fell silent for a moment as relatives admired the artwork. Sarah felt a warm satisfaction, knowing that her gift had touched her parents deeply. But the moment was brief. Rebecca's voice cut through the appreciative murmurs. "It's very sweet, Sarah, but honestly, how much could a painting like that cost? I mean, compared to practical gifts that Mom and Dad can actually use, it seems a bit sentimental." The criticism stung more than Sarah had expected. She felt her cheeks burn as relatives shifted uncomfortably. Her father started to defend the gift, but Rebecca continued before he could speak. "I'm just saying that when you're on a librarian's budget, maybe practical gifts make more sense. I'm sure Mom and Dad appreciate the thought, but they have bills to pay and a house to maintain. A nice painting is lovely, but it doesn't help with real life." Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. The gift had taken months to plan and commission. She had worked closely with the artist, sharing family photos and stories to ensure every detail was perfect. The cost had actually been substantial, but that wasn't the point. The painting was an expression of love and understanding, a recognition of what truly mattered to her parents. "Rebecca, that's enough," their father said firmly, but the damage was done. The room buzzed with uncomfortable energy, and Sarah felt the familiar sensation of being diminished in front of people whose opinions mattered to her. The evening continued, but Sarah found herself withdrawing from conversations. She helped clean up after the party, assisted with getting the children settled for the night, and tried to recapture the joy she had felt earlier. But Rebecca's words echoed in her mind, reinforcing years of subtle and not-so-subtle messages about her perceived shortcomings. The next morning brought the family brunch, the final event of the anniversary celebration. Sarah woke early and helped her mother prepare breakfast, finding comfort in the familiar routines of cooking and serving. The extended family gathered around the large dining table, sharing stories and making plans for future gatherings. During brunch, the conversation turned to recent family news and updates. Rebecca dominated the discussion with details about her latest real estate ventures, her children's achievements in school, and her husband's promotion at work. David shared news about his law practice expansion and their plans to build a new house in an exclusive neighborhood. When relatives asked Sarah about her life, she mentioned the library's recent grant funding for new programs and her involvement in community literacy initiatives. She spoke passionately about the impact these programs were having on local families, the joy of seeing children discover their love of reading, and the satisfaction of helping adults improve their skills. Rebecca listened with visible impatience. When Sarah finished speaking, her sister shook her head with what appeared to be genuine frustration. "Sarah, I love that you care about people, but when are you going to care about yourself? When are you going to want more than just getting by?" "I'm not just getting by," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm living the life I've chosen." "Chosen," Rebecca repeated sarcastically. "You've chosen to limit yourself, you've chosen to settle for less than you could have. You've chosen to waste your education and your potential on a job that anyone could do." The insult hit its mark. Sarah felt her composure beginning to crack. "Not anyone could do my job, Rebecca. It requires education, training, and genuine care for others." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Don't lecture me about education. I have an MBA and I've built a business from nothing. David has a law degree, and he's a partner in his firm. What do you have? A library science degree, and a job that pays barely above minimum wage." "Rebecca, please," their mother interjected, sensing the escalating tension. But Rebecca wasn't finished. Years of accumulated frustration seemed to pour out of her all at once. "I'm tired of pretending that Sarah's choices are admirable when they're actually just sad. She's 28 years old, and she has nothing to show for her life. No career advancement, no financial security, no husband, no children, no real future." The words fell like stones into the sudden silence of the dining room. Extended family members stared at their plates, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Sarah felt her heart pounding as her sister's criticism became more personal and cutting. "I have a career that matters to me," Sarah said quietly, struggling to maintain her composure. "A career?" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Sarah, you stamp books and read stories to children. That's not a career, that's volunteer work that happens to come with a small paycheck. You live in a tiny apartment, drive an old car, and spend your evenings alone with your books. Is that really the life you want?" Sarah stood up from the table, her hands shaking slightly. I think I should go. Of course you should go, Rebecca continued, her voice rising. That's what you always do. You run away whenever someone tells you the truth about your life, but running away won't change the fact that you've wasted your 20s, and you're heading toward a future of loneliness and regret. Rebecca, stop, their father commanded, his voice sharp with authority, but something had been unleashed in Rebecca that couldn't be easily contained. She stood up as well, facing her sister across the table. No, I won't stop. I've watched Sarah drift through life for years, making excuses for why she hasn't accomplished anything meaningful. I've listened to family members make polite conversation about her little library job while she falls further and further behind in life. Someone needs to tell her the truth. Sarah felt tears threatening, but she refused to let them fall. The truth according to who? You. Since when did financial success become the only measure of a person's worth? Since always, Rebecca snapped. Money represents security, independence and options. Without it, you're dependent on others, vulnerable to circumstances, and limited in what you can achieve. Look around this room, Sarah. Everyone here has built something substantial except you. The attack felt coordinated and comprehensive, as if Rebecca had been cataloging Sarah's perceived failures for years. Sarah looked around the table at relatives who couldn't meet her eyes, at her parents who looked stricken, at her brother David, who seemed torn between supporting his wife and defending his sister. I don't need to justify my life choices to you or anyone else, Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. Don't you? Rebecca's voice was cold now, because from where I'm sitting, your choices look like fear. You're afraid to take risks, afraid to compete, afraid to fail, so you've chosen the safest, smallest life possible, and convinced yourself it's noble. The accusation of cowardice was the final straw. Sarah felt something snap inside her, not into anger but into a crystalline clarity about what was happening. This wasn't about concern for her well-being. This was about Rebecca's need to establish and maintain superiority within the family hierarchy. You're right about one thing, Sarah said quietly. I have been afraid, but not of the things you think. Rebecca's eyes lit up with triumph, thinking she had finally gotten through to her sister. Then admit it. Admit that you've settled for less than you could have. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 18 months of secrecy and years of accumulated family dynamics. I've been afraid of this, of what would happen to our family if you knew the truth about my life. What truth? Rebecca demanded. That you're finally ready to admit you need to make some changes. Before Sarah could respond, Rebecca continued her assault. Because if you are, I can help you. I can get you interviews at real companies, introduce you to successful men, help you build a life worth living. But first you have to stop pretending that your current situation is anything other than a waste of your potential. The condescension in her sister's voice, the assumption that Sarah needed to be rescued from her own choices, the complete inability to consider that perhaps Sarah's life was exactly what she wanted it to be, finally pushed her past her limits. I don't need your help, Rebecca, Sarah said, her voice quiet but firm. Yes you do, Rebecca insisted. You just don't want to admit, because that would mean acknowledging that David and I were right about your choices, but denial won't change reality. You're 28, single, living paycheck to paycheck in a dead-end job. If that's not needing help, I don't know what is. The assumption that she was single hit Sarah like a physical blow. For 18 months she had been living a double life, protecting her family from the complications that would come with knowing about her marriage and her wealth. She had endured countless comments about her single status, her lack of prospects, her apparent inability to find a man who would want to build a life with her. You don't know anything about my life, Sarah said, her composure finally cracking. I know enough, Rebecca replied triumphantly. I know that you're alone, struggling financially, and too proud to accept help from family members who care. That's when it happened. Rebecca raised her hand and slapped Sarah across the face with enough force to snap her head to the side. The sharp crack echoed through the dining room, as 23 family members sat in stunned silence. Maybe that will wake you up, Rebecca said, breathing heavily from the adrenaline of the moment. Maybe now you'll stop living in your fantasy world and face reality. Sarah stood there, her cheek burning from the slap, champagne from someone's dropped glass spreading across the table, her family staring in shock at what had just transpired. The humiliation was complete and public, witnessed by everyone whose opinion had shaped her childhood and influenced her adult choices. But what Rebecca didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Sarah's phone was already buzzing with an incoming call from Marcus, who was finishing his morning meetings and expecting to pick her up within the hour. Sarah's phone buzzed on the table as she stood with her burning cheek. Marcus's name flashed on the screen, and Rebecca immediately snatched it away before Sarah could answer. "Whoever this is can call back later," Rebecca announced to the room. "Sarah needs to focus on this family intervention." Marcus's voice came through the speaker, calm but with steel underneath. "Who is this?" Rebecca's confidence wavered slightly. "This is Rebecca Martinez, Sarah's sister. We're helping her understand some hard truths about her pathetic life." Put Sarah back on the phone immediately. The command was quiet but unmistakable. Rebecca hesitated, then thrust the phone back at Sarah with irritation. "Sarah, are you hurt?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice shook. "I'm 2 minutes away. Stay exactly where you are." The line went dead. Sarah set her phone down as the room buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. Her father Roberto looked confused, while her mother Elena wrung her hands anxiously. "Who was that supposed to be?" Rebecca demanded. "Some boyfriend who's going to rescue you from your family telling you the truth." Before Sarah could respond, expensive car doors slammed outside. Through the window she watched a tall figure in an immaculate charcoal suit stride up the walkway with purposeful steps. The doorbell rang and Elena moved uncertainly toward the door. "Sarah, who is this person?" "That's Marcus," Sarah said quietly. "My husband." The collective gasp from 23 family members echoed through the house. Rebecca's face drained of all color as she stared at Sarah. "What?" Roberto demanded. Elena opened the door to reveal Marcus Thompson, whose commanding presence immediately silenced the room. He was distinguished, powerful, and radiated the kind of authority that comes from running billion-dollar companies. His dark eyes scanned the tense scene before focusing on Sarah. "Mrs. Martinez," he said politely to Elena. "I'm Marcus Thompson, Sarah's husband. I apologize for arriving unannounced." Elena stared at him speechlessly. Marcus moved directly to Sarah's trained gaze, immediately noting the red handprint on her cheek. His jaw clenched as he gently touched her face. "Who did this to you?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Sarah glanced around at her shocked family. Rebecca stood frozen, her earlier aggression completely evaporated. Extended relatives whispered among themselves, clearly recognizing Marcus from business news. "It's complicated," Sarah said softly. "No, it's not," Marcus replied firmly. "Someone in this room assaulted my wife. I want to know who." Rebecca found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "I didn't know she was married. I thought I was helping her face reality about her failures." Marcus turned his full attention to Rebecca, his expression ice cold. "What reality would that be?" "That she's wasting her life," Rebecca stammered. "Working for nothing at a library, living like she's poor, having no future prospects. I was trying to wake her up." Marcus pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Richard, run a complete background check on Rebecca Martinez. Financial records, business licenses, everything. Send it immediately." Rebecca's face went green. "What are you doing?" "Finding out who thought they could assault my wife," Marcus replied calmly. His phone buzzed and he glanced at the message. "Rebecca Martinez, real estate agent, annual income approximately $240,000. Impressive for someone lecturing others about financial success." The room fell silent as Marcus continued. "Sarah inherited $15 million from her grandfather, plus substantial business interests generating passive income. She works at the library by choice, not necessity." Rebecca collapsed into a chair, all color drained from her face. $15 million. "Not including her share of my assets since our marriage," Marcus added relentlessly. "Thompson Industries is worth $3.2 billion. Sarah could purchase your entire real estate business without checking her account balance." Roberto stared at his daughters in confusion. "Sarah, is this true?" Sarah nodded. "Grandpa left me everything when he died. I've been managing it quietly while deciding what to do with my life." Elena sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because of this exact reaction," Sarah said, gesturing to Rebecca's shocked expression. "I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have." Marcus moved closer to Rebecca, his presence intimidating. "Your sister chose meaningful work over high salary because she has character. She chose to marry me privately because she values substance over show." You just physically attacked a woman worth more than everyone in this room combined. I'm sorry, Rebecca whispered, tears flowing. I didn't know.
You didn't want to know, Marcus corrected coldly. You wanted to feel superior to someone you thought was beneath you. What you actually did was assault the wife of someone with unlimited resources to make your life very uncomfortable. Roberto stepped forward, shaking. Marcus, I apologize for my daughter's inexcusable behavior. Your apology doesn't undo the assault, Marcus replied. Sarah has endured years of condescension from family members who measured her worth by her bank account rather than her character. He pulled out his phone again. Jennifer, draft cease and desist orders for harassment and assault. Also prepare civil complaints and restraining orders. Rebecca stood frantically. Please, I'm family. I made a mistake. Family doesn't assault family, Marcus said coldly. Family doesn't humiliate each other publicly. You revealed exactly who you are when you think someone is powerless. David finally spoke up. Marcus, isn't this extreme? We're talking about family here. Marcus turned his cold stare to David. Were you planning to stop the assault? Because I watched you sit there while your sister abused my wife. David flushed with shame. I didn't think it would get physical. You all thought wrong about everything, Marcus replied. You thought Sarah was struggling, so you treated her as lesser. You thought her work was unimportant, so you dismissed her contributions. Your assumptions were completely incorrect. Sarah looked around at her family, seeing them clearly for the first time. I kept my marriage secret to protect our relationships. I wanted to remain your daughter and sister without money complicating everything. Elena reached for Sarah's hands. We would have loved you the same. Would you? Sarah asked gently. Or would you have expected me to fund family vacations, bail out relatives, invest in business ventures? Money changes everything. The uncomfortable silence confirmed her suspicions. Marcus checked his watch. We're leaving. Sarah has endured enough abuse for one day. Rebecca stood desperately. Sarah, please. Can't we work this out as family? Sarah studied her sister, seeing not the successful businesswoman who had just humiliated her, but the older sister from childhood. Rebecca, you didn't just make a mistake. You showed me who you really are when you think someone is beneath you. That's not true, Rebecca protested. 5 minutes ago you were calling my life worthless, Sarah replied. Now that you know I have money, suddenly we're family again. What changed except your perception of my wealth? As they moved toward the door, Elena called desperately, when will we see you again? Sarah paused, looking back at the family that had shaped her. I don't know, Mama. I need time to decide what relationships I want going forward. Roberto stepped forward. Please don't let Rebecca's behavior destroy our whole family. I'm not destroying anything, Papa, Sarah replied sadly. I'm finally seeing things clearly. Today showed me that some of you love the idea of me more than the reality. At the car, Sarah turned back to address everyone gathered on the porch. I want you all to understand something. I didn't need rescuing from my life because my life was exactly what I wanted. What happened today wasn't about helping me. It was about power and assumptions that were completely wrong. She looked directly at Rebecca. Financial success doesn't give anyone the right to judge others. That assumption nearly cost you everything. As they drove away, Sarah felt relief mixed with sadness. The truth was finally out, but family relationships might never recover. Are you okay? Marcus asked gently. Sarah considered carefully. Her cheeks still ached, her heart hurt from the confrontation, but she felt something like freedom. I think I will be, she said. It's going to take time to figure out what my family relationships look like now, but at least everything is honest. Marcus squeezed her hand. I'm proud of how you handled that. You could have used your wealth to stop their criticism any time, but you didn't weaponize it until you were literally assaulted. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly with calls from relatives wanting to apologize or explain. She turned it off, finally allowing herself to cry for the relationships that would never be the same. The simple librarian who had tried to protect her family from wealth's complications was gone, replaced by someone who understood that authenticity sometimes requires painful revelations and difficult boundaries. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.